Bonjour, bienvenidos, benvenuti, welcome to the Music Polyglot channel. Now, this being the Music Polyglot channel, you know you'll find good quality subtitles down there. Today we'll be looking at There's Nothing Holding Me Back by Shawn Mendes. This is a great tune if you are a beginner because it's only got 4 chords. Now we'll break it all down so you can play it exactly as it is on the record. If you are a professional player or a very advanced player, well, that was all you needed to know. That's all there is to the song, all the different parts, etc, etc. So go get 'em, Tiger! For the rest of us, let's break things down. Let's get to it! Okay, so the first section we're going to look at is the verse. Let me play you the part slowly so that you see what's going on. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so what's going on there is, first we have one low G note. Okay, so that's going to be your middle finger on the 3rd fret of your bottom E string. That's your first note. Then you have a D, which you can play with your pinky, so your finger 4 on the 5th fret of the A string. Then on the same string you play the index on the 2nd fret. So far that's okay. Then you go back to the pinky, and then with the same pinky you just drop to the low E string, and that's the last note. So G, that D with the pinky, to the B with the index, back to the D with the pinky, and then A still with the pinky. Okay, now that's the most efficient way of fingering that. If you want to play that with fingers 1 and 3 because it's easier for you, by all means do that, that's fine. There's technically no reason why you shouldn't do that. Even further, if you want, you can play the A as an open A. Okay, why do I choose to play it here? Because it gives you more control, because you can then mute it, stop the sound, you know, manipulate it a bit easier. You can't, it's really hard to manipulate an open string. Now you've probably noticed that the sound isn't an open sound. You're actually palm muting. Okay, for those of you for which this is new, palm muting means that you're going to use this part of your palm, of your hand, against the bridge. The bridge is this section here where the strings end. You're going to put your palm there, okay, right before the end of the string. So you want to be on the strings to create that sound of a muted string. You can hear that the sound sustains, okay? You don't want to kill the string like that. That means that you're too far in. Okay, you don't want that. You want to go all the way back down, be over the bridge. That's it. You want to hear the note sustain. Okay? So that's the only trick for that, and that's how you get that sound. So the last thing to talk about is the rhythm here. So you have to play on the beat, on the first beat of the bar. 1, 2, 3, 4, bam. Okay. And then you play in between beats 3 and 4, the and of 3, and also in between 4 and the next one, so the and of 4, like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, and. And as you can see, it's always and, except on the very first bar of the sequence. 1, 2, 3, and 2, 3, and 2, 3, and 2, 3, and here 1, 2, 3. So it's only the G, the first note in the sequence, that is played on the beat. Everything else is played on the and of 3 and the and of 4. Now this is going to be really important. Get the rhythm right now, because the rhythm in the choruses is exactly the same. So if you figure it out now, it'll avoid you a lot of frustration later when you have to be dealing with bigger chords, etc., etc. Now in the choruses, this is the great thing about this song, it's actually exactly the same thing as in the verses, except that you're not just playing the bass note, you're playing a full power chord. Right? Play a 3-note power chord. So your index will always play the bass note. Your third finger will always be 2 frets further up. Okay, so you have an empty fret between your 2 fingers, and it's on the string below. In this case, the A string, and the pinky is right underneath your third finger, your ring finger. That's a 3-note power chord. Right? And what you're going to do is you're going to be playing the same notes as before in the verse, except that now as power chords. So that means that you're going to be moving around quite a lot. The best way to get that right, especially if you're just beginning, is think of this shape, that power chord shape, as a solid chunk. You don't want to be taking one finger off at a time, etc., etc. It takes too long. We don't have time for that. You want to think as that as a fixed shape that you just move up and down the neck, okay? Because that's essentially what we're going to be doing. So with the rhythm, that chorus sounds like this: 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, just an extra note for those of you who might want to go a bit further with this. There's a really great effect on some of those chords that is achieved by sliding down. Right? Now, if you want to add that to your playing, one thing that's important is make sure that you sustain the chord for one whole beat before you slide down. Check it out. 1, 2, 3. 1 slide. 1 slide. 1 slide. Excellent. Apart from that, the rhythm is exactly the same as in the verses, so we don't need to go into detail with that. Let me show you what happens in the bridge. So it's essentially the same, okay? Same rhythm. Your power chords, instead of them being 3-note power chords, they're going to be only 2-note power chords, so you can get rid of the pinky. And even though the rhythm and where you change chords is exactly the same, you have a couple of extra strums, like this. Alright, maybe a bit slower. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and extra strum, extra strum. Yeah, did you get that? So you have a strum on every second beat of the bar. 1, 2. Okay, for those of you who have noticed that strum on the second beat is actually a little bit different, you're right, it's not just a palm muted strum, it's actually a completely muted strum. So you want to strum and mute at the same time. It's not just palm muted, it's actually a complete mute. So you want really just a dead sound. Okay, that's a little bit harder to get, so don't worry too much about it. If you play it twice, completely open, as long as you play it softly, it already sounds very decent. The transitions, you know that at the end of verses and at the end of the bridge, you have that transition back into the chorus that goes. That's achieved essentially by playing that A power chord, the 3-string power chord, as a crescendo, which means getting progressively louder throughout the whole of the bar previous to the chorus. So just to play you an example, out from the bridge, say. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, getting louder progressively and playing 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. You're playing every quaver, every eighth note in the bar. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. I've shown you all the little technical details that you can start introducing to the song, but don't let them stop you. You don't really need to worry too much about all the subtleties if they don't come natural to you yet. Just go on and play the song with those 4 chords, and you see they're going to have a lot of fun. As long as you make sure that the rhythm is accurate, okay, that is non-negotiable. For those of you who are playing acoustic, know that the chords that are implied are G major. So on an acoustic guitar, you could play a full G major, D major, B minor, and A major. Okay, so if you're playing on an acoustic guitar, you want to come up with your own thing, know that those are the 4 chords. So G, okay, if you don't like the sound of power chords, or if you're playing an acoustic guitar, you want to sing along, you might want to try that. Now we're going to look at what the acoustic guitars are doing. Now these parts on the acoustic guitars are by far the hardest in the whole song. You don't actually need to play these parts unless you're playing with another guitarist, or if you're playing in a band, or if you really want to get that intro right, the bong, ba-dum, ba-dum, da-dum, then yes, this is what you're going to have to work on. It's going to take time to get right as well, so you know, patience and hard work. This is also the bit that is most widely misunderstood if you've been looking at YouTube videos on how to play this song. What I'm going to show you is how to play it so that it sounds the way it sounds on the record, okay? If you want to simplify it, if you want to change it, then that's up to you. I'll show you what's going on the actual track. Let me play it for you slowly so that you see what's going on. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let me show you how that goes. First, you need a low G, so that's your second finger on fret 3 of the low E string. That note's a G. You're going to play that once, palm muted. And then with your index, you're going to play the second fret on the D string, and you're going to slide up 2 frets. It's a slide, it's not a hammer-on. So it's a slide from 2 to 4, and then you come back, so, right? You're gonna have to come back with the same finger. You're sliding up with the index, and then the index has to come back. Okay? You'll notice one thing with the rhythm. You have 2 ghost notes. You have a ghost note before you play the first E, so the first note with your index, and before you play the second E, the second note with your index. So see that? If you can practice just that, it'd be great, because that's the rhythm throughout, and that's quite tricky because it's really fast. But if you listen to the record, you can hear all those ghost notes, and that's really what makes it so great, what it makes it work, really. Without that, it's borderline whether it works or not. Now, in terms of the strumming, your hand needs to be going like this. If you have the beat here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, your hand firstly goes down on the beat, but it needs to be playing 4 notes in each beat. It needs to be playing 16th notes or semiquavers. So it needs to be going 1E and a 2E and a 3 and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3 and a 4E and a down up, 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 down up. Okay? So when you're playing the riff, it goes. Notice how my hand is just, my strumming hand is just going down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. And that allows me to introduce those ghost notes with them sounding in time, actually contributing to the rhythm feel. So the second chord is very, very similar. Now your bass note will be played, it's a B bass note with finger 3 on the 7th fret of the E string, and again you have a slide, but this time you're sliding from fret 4, again on the D string, from fret 4 to fret 5, so it's only a 1 fret slide. You have this bit of a stretch between finger 3 and then the index that has to go down all the way down to fret 4, okay? The rhythm is exactly the same. And then you have the bass note again with finger 3, this time on A. That's the 5th fret of the low E string. And your index will play the same 2 notes as it played on the first chord. So on the D string again from frets 2 to 4. Okay, so you have 2 frets again. I mean a 2 fret slide. Right, the rhythm is the hardest thing to get here, especially with the ghost notes. But if you listen carefully to the record, you'll see that that's what makes it work. That's what makes it cool. You'll also notice that there are 2 guitar parts. They're playing octaves. You're going to have to come all the way down here to play the second guitar part. The rhythm is exactly the same. The notes are slightly different. So first you have the bass note. You hear on the A string 10th fret. It's also a G. Same note, just an octave higher. So the shape is going to be the same as here. Okay, so you have that note with your index on the 9th fret of the G string, of the 3rd string, 9th fret. You're going to be sliding up 2 frets. So, and then back with the same finger. The second bass note, the B, is now here. Okay, so that's the 9th fret on the D string with your index on the 4th string. And then with your 3rd finger, you're going to be playing the 11th fret on the G string and sliding up 1 fret as on the other part, and then back. So. Then you come down 2 frets with the same shape, but this time you slide up 2 frets and back down. Okay, so the whole thing again really slowly. That's sliding up with your index, sliding up with the 3rd finger, 1 fret, down 2 frets, sliding up 2 frets. Alright, this is tricky, I know, but it's really, really cool. you know that this part is also played in the choruses. Now in the choruses it's a little different. First of all, you're not playing bass notes, so that's going to make it easier. Let me play it for you once. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, you've noticed a couple of things. Obviously you've noticed what I told you, you have no bass notes, but there are a couple of extra notes there, right? Let me show you what they are. So the first slide is actually the same as before. Now before we were playing that slide with finger 1 because of the shape, right? Because of the shape we were using before. Now, because we don't have that bass note anymore, we don't need to play it, that kind of frees up finger 3 to slide up so we can come back down with finger 1. It makes it easier, and it makes more sense for what's coming later. So I suggest that in the choruses you do that. You slide up with finger 3 and then you come down to finger 2 with the index. Okay. When you slide from 4 to 5 on the D string again, so that's on the second chord, just stick to finger 3. So those are the 2 new notes, right? The first time you slide as you did in the intro, so from 4 to 5 and back, but the second time, once you've slid up to 5, you have to drop all the way down to 2, play that note, which is an E on the D string, and then the 4, so, right, slide up, second, 4, 1, 2, okay, and then you go back to sliding from 2 to 4. But on the 4th time, something different will happen. Check it out. 2, 3, 4. Okay. You slide up from 2 to 4. You play fret 2, that E, and then you play that string open. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4. Dun, dun. The second guitar plays exactly the same as the first, except that it plays it an octave higher. So you're on fret 9 of the G string in the same way, right? Going from finger 3 to 1. Then the second chord, finger 3 on its own, like the previous guitar part. And just like the previous guitar, you go up the slide, you have to come down with the index to fret 9 in this case. We're still on the G string, and then fret 11, so 9, 11. Okay, and then back to the original 2. That's 9 to 11 on the G string. 3 times, and then, right? So when you do that, you're going to have to slide with finger 3 from fret 9 to 11, then down with the index as you've been doing, down to that E, and then the last note, you just have to take that index down 2 more frets to play that D. As always, and also as in the intro, the rhythm is going to be really, really important. The direction of your strums is what's going to allow you to play that. Especially if you're playing in a band, you want to get this right. It's going to make a massive difference to how cool this sounds. Let's move on to the last part on the acoustic guitar. So in the second verse, we're going to be playing more notes than just the bass note, but the bass notes are the same. Let me play it for you slowly so that you know what's going on. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and same rhythm as before. bass notes are the same. So the first is G. This time we're going to be playing it with finger 1. So index. Then we're going to be playing the octave. So finger 3, the ring finger is going to be playing the D string 5th fret. And your second finger is going to be playing the 3rd string 4th fret. You're going to be finger picking that with your thumb, your index and your middle finger. You want to pick all 3. Okay, that's a G major chord without a 5th. Okay, that's your first chord. The rhythm will be exactly the same as the other guitar. Second chord, also the same bass notes as the other guitar part, so D in this case, finger 1 on the 5th string 5th fret. Then your third finger plays the octave as well, so on the G string 7th fret, so 3rd string 7th fret, and the pinky will go right underneath that 3rd finger. Okay, also on the 7th fret, but on the B string. Okay, that's chord number 2. So far you have 1, 2, 3. Alright. Your third chord is on those same strings. You have to drop down to the 2nd fret. Okay. Playing the exact same shape. And we're going to swap the pinky for finger 2. So it looks similar to the first shape, except that we're on a different set of strings. Okay, so that's index on the 5th string 2nd fret, 3rd finger, ring finger on the 3rd string 4th fret, and finger 2, your middle finger, on the 2nd string 3rd fret. So far you have this. Okay. Then you come back to that D, to the 5th fret, and then you go to that A, which is the exact same shape as the first chord, the G, but 2 frets higher. Okay, so altogether you have this. And then you repeat that. D, that's it. So that's it. I hope you had fun. It's a fun song to play, that one, especially if you're a beginner. It's a really good song to get your fingers on those power chords. If you have any questions, pop them in the comments below. If you are after tabs or sheet music or more in-depth details or even a lesson on the song, well, that is all available to all my Patreons. So hey, why not become one yourself by following the link below. Thank you for watching till the end, and I'll see you next time. Hasta la próxima, arrivederci, au revoir.